Right, not having very much luck today. My phone keeps filling up with video and then stops the recording, but I've just deleted lots, so hopefully I can carry on now. Here we go. Okay, so, excuse me. That shook Mr. Wormwood. He was not used to being spoken to in this way. He peered carefully at the slim, frail woman who stood so resolutely out on his on the porch. "Oh, very well then," he snapped. "Come on in and let's get this over with." Miss Honey stepped briskly inside. "Mrs. Wormwood isn't going to thank you for this," the man said, as he led her into the sitting room, where a large platinum blonde woman was gazing rapturously at the TV screen. "Who is it?" the woman said, not looking round. "Some school teacher," Mr. Wormwood said. "She says she's got to talk to us about Matilda." He crossed to the TV set and turned down the sound, but left the picture on the screen. "Don't do that, Harry," Miss Wormwood cried out. "Williard is just about to propose to Angelica." "You can still watch it while we're talking," Mr. Wormwood said. "This is Matilda's teacher. She says she's got some sort of news to give us." "My name is Jennifer Honey," Miss Honey said. "How do you do, Mrs. Wormwood?" Mrs. Wormwood glared at her and said, "What's the trouble then?" Nobody invited Miss Honey to sit down, so she chose a chair and sat down anyway. "This," she said, "was your daughter's first day at school." "We know that," Miss Wormwood said, ratty about missing her programme. "Is that all you came to tell us?" Miss Honey stared into the other woman's wet grey eyes, and she allowed the silence to hang in the air until Miss Wormwood became uncomfortable. "Do you wish me to explain why I came?" she said. "Get on with it," Mrs. Wormwood said. "I'm sure you know," Miss Honey said, "that children in the bottom class at school are not expected to be able to read or spell or juggle with numbers when they first arrive. 5-year-olds cannot do that. But Matilda can do it all, and if I am to believe her—" "I wouldn't," Mrs. Wormwood said. She was still ratty at losing the sound on the TV. "Was she lying then," Miss Wormwood said, "when she told me that nobody taught her to multiply or to read? Did either of you teach her?" "Teach her what?" Mr. Wormwood said. "To read. To read books," Miss Honey said. "Perhaps you did teach her. Perhaps she was lying. Perhaps you have a shelf full of books all over the house. I wouldn't know. Perhaps you are both great readers." "Of course we read," Mr. Wormwood said. "Don't be so daft. I read the autocar and the motor from cover to cover every week." "This child has already read an astonishing number of books," Miss Honey said. "I was simply trying to find out if she came from a family that loved good literature." We don't hold with book reading," Mr. Wormwood said. "You can't make a living from sitting on your fanny and reading storybooks. We don't keep them in the house." "I see," Miss Honey said. "Well, all I came to tell you was that Matilda has a brilliant mind, but I expect you knew that already." "Of course I knew she could read," the mother said. "She spends half her life up in the room buried in some silly book." "But does it not intrigue you," Miss Honey said, "that a little 5-year-old child is reading long adult novels by Dickens and Hemingway? Doesn't that make you jump up and down with excitement?" "Not particularly," the mother said. "I'm not in favour of blue stocking girls. A girl should think about making herself look attractive so she can get a good husband later on. Looks is more important than books, Miss Hunky." "The name is Honey," Miss Honey said. "Now look at me," Mrs. Wormwood said. "Then look at you. You chose books, I chose looks." Miss Honey looked at the plain, plump person with the smug, suet pudding face who was sitting across the room. "What did you say?" she asked. "I said you chose books and I chose looks," Mrs. Wormwood said. "And who's finished up the better off?" "Me, of course. I'm sitting pretty in a nice house with a successful businessman, and you're left slaving away teaching a lot of nasty little children the ABC. "Quite right, Sugar Plum," Mr. Wormwood said, casting a look of such simpering sloppiness at his wife it would have made a cat sick. Miss Honey decided that if she was going to get anywhere with these people, she must not lose her temper. I haven't told you all of it yet, she said. Matilda, so far as I can gather, is at this early stage is also a kind of mathematical genius. She can multiply complicated figures in her head like lightning. What's the point of that when you can buy a calculator, as Mr. Wormwood said? A girl doesn't get a man by being brainy, Mrs. Wormwood said. Look at that film star, for instance, she added, pointing at a silent TV screen where a blossomy female was being embraced by a craggy actor in the moonlight. You don't think she got him to do that by multiplying figures at him, do you? Not likely, and now he's going to marry her. You see, if he doesn't, and she's going to live in a mansion with a butler and lots of maids. Miss Honey could hardly believe what she was hearing. She had heard that parents like this existed all over the place, and that their children turned out to be delinquents and dropouts, but it was all still a shock to meet a pair of them in the flesh. Matilda's trouble, she said, trying once again, is that she is so far ahead of everyone else around her that it might be worth thinking about some extra kind of private tuition. I seriously believe that she could be brought up to the university standard in 2 or 3 years with the proper coaching. University? Mr. Wormwood shouted, bouncing up in his chair. Who wants to go to university, for heaven's sake? All they learn there is bad habits. That is not true, Miss Honey said. If you had a heart attack this minute and had to call a doctor, that doctor would be a university graduate. If you got sued for selling someone a rotten second-hand car, you'd have to get a lawyer, and he'd be a university graduate too. Do not despise clever people, Mr. Wormwood, but I can see we're not going to agree. I'm sorry I burst in on you like this. Miss Honey rose from her chair and walked out of the room. Mr. Wormwood followed her to the front door and said, Good of you to come, Miss Hawkes, or is it Miss Harris? It's neither, Miss Honey said, but let it go, and she went away. Do I do the next one? It's probably a bit long. Yeah, I'm going to do it another time. Right. Hope you enjoyed that. Next one's going to be about a hammer throw, which is actually like an Olympic sport, but we'll come to that soon. Okay. Well, wherever you are in the world, and whatever year, and whatever month, whatever day, I hope when you read this, or when you see this, that you're doing well. And I love you. Bye-bye.